Good. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the August 23rd Board of Education meeting for the Phelps Clifton Springs Central School District. Crystal, could you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, starting here. Jake Amadon, Board Member.
Amber Wilkes, Board Member.
Ryan Davis, Board Member.
Matt Murphy, Board Member.
Don Miller, Board Member.
Matt Sickles, Superintendent.
Crystal Plant, District Clerk.
Thank you. Third on the agenda is the approval of the rest of the agenda. Can I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Ryan with the second. Don with the second. Any discussion on the agenda as written? Remember, there are copies of the agenda at the front of the room, and you can find them online also if you're participating that way. Discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 4 is appointment of board member. So for the following resolution, to appoint Lindsay Marino as board member, whereas Sherry Sherbin has resigned from her seat on the Board of Education effective July 15, 2021. And whereas in accordance with subdivision 6 of section 2502 of the education law, a vacancy on the board may be filled by a vote of the majority of the remaining members of the board, and the person so appointed shall hold office until the next regular school district election and shall take office immediately upon the filing of his or her official oath of office with the district clerk. So resolved that the board hereby appoints Lindsay Marino to fill the said vacancy, and she shall take office immediately upon the filing of her official oath of office with the district clerk, and shall hold office until the next regular school district election. Any discussion on this appointment from the board?
Just to say welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. All right. All in favor of appointing Lindsay Marino as board member, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Lindsay, can you come up and take your oath of office, please?
All right, you're just going to read right here. Read through all of this down to there. Then I'll have you sign.
I, Lindsay Marino, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of board member according to my best ability.
And if I could just have you sign right there. Thank you.
Awesome. Again, Lindsay, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving into our presentations. The main purpose for tonight's meeting is the overview of the reopening plan by Matt Sickles. Take it away.
Thank you. So my presentation tonight is largely reflective of the presentation last week when I went over the major components of the reopening plan and then received feedback from the board. There is some additional information acquired from Ontario County and an update on our optional reopening or optional remote learning plan. But otherwise, again, an overview of what was discussed last week. So just a quick reminder, I'm not going to read all of these, but these were the goals that guided the district in developing the reopening plan. First and foremost was to promote in-person instruction while providing a safe environment and prevent the spread of COVID-19 in our school and in our community. Again, the focus is on in-person instruction, and you'll notice that the health and safety protocols are designed to offset the different areas of flexibility that make full in-person instruction possible. I can certainly speak to any of these goals if there are any questions. Otherwise, I will move on since we did these last week as well. An overview of the planning process. Once again, there's collaboration and consultation with various groups and partners to interpret and respond to CDC and state ed guidance, specifically the Ontario County Administration of Public Health, the Phelps-Clifton Springs School Physician, the Ontario County School Superintendents, and the Phelps-Clifton Springs Central School District legal team. We've been tracking county transmission rates for Ontario County, and the system of tracking those rates is listed there. Low, moderate, substantial, and high, and that comes into play in just a moment. Currently, Ontario County has a transmission level at the substantial or orange level with 90.18 cases per 100,000 population. Last week, I think it was on Thursday afternoon, we reached the high or red transmission level with 102.03 cases per 100,000. So it came down a little over the weekend. Key points in relation to the plan. First and foremost, all educational services, including instruction and social emotional supports, will be provided in person, and all grades will follow the regular schedules. Probably the biggest change there from last year is that grades 7 through 12 will return to the 8-period day as opposed to the 4-period block that we used last year. Physical distances of 3 feet indoors, and that covers all indoor areas, classrooms, common areas, eating areas, music, PE, etc. Indoor masking is required when Ontario County is designated as moderate, substantial, or a high transmission zone. Again, right now we're at substantial. Indoor mask breaks at 6 feet physical distance and outdoor time are both encouraged. Both principals are putting out mask break protocols that are mandatory. Very important point here. If Ontario County sustains transmission rates at the lower range of moderate for an extended period, the district will consider adjusting the indoor masking protocol at that time. For example, if, based upon trends that we saw this summer, the cutoff between moderate and substantial is 50 cases. So if we were to dip to like 45, that would not necessarily be the time to relax the masking protocol out of fear of then spiking back up into the substantial. We want to contribute countywide to the lowering of that rate. But if we were in the 20s or low 30s for a prolonged period of time, then we would consider relaxing the masking protocol to strongly encourage but optional at that time. The CDC and state ed no longer require physical distances on school buses. Therefore, students will be seated 2 to 3 to a seat on buses as needed, with the second and third students being added to a seat later in the run, and masks are required for passengers and drivers on buses at all times. We will have, as required by state ed, a remote learning plan for required shifts to remote learning. Those could be small scale or large scale based on quarantine, isolation, school closure, or government order, and I'd get into that a little bit more detail in a minute. And the Midlakes 21-22 reopening plan closely reflects how grades UPK through 6 ended last school year with 3 feet physical distance, required indoor masking, and no evidence of COVID transmission in school. So in the areas where there is greater flexibility, which I'll cover, are offset through a multi-layered mitigation strategy, which is encouraged, with mask wearing being the primary strategy, with closer physical distances. Quick review of our health and safety protocols. We'll no longer use the temperature checks upon entry or the daily health screenings, as they're no longer recommended or required. We will send out periodic messages, reminders to families about the importance of our health and safety protocols and precautions, and especially staying home when ill. We'll provide periodic updates on positive cases as opposed to daily or every time there's a positive case. We'll monitor that and do it more in batches unless circumstances suggest otherwise. Signage will continue to be posted to promote hand and respiratory hygiene. Health offices are reconfigured for social distancing in sick and well areas, but quarantine rooms are no longer required. From a cleaning and disinfecting perspective, all the special COVID health and safety and cleaning and disinfection protocols from last year will continue, and we'll continue to change our HVAC filters in excess of what the manufacturer recommends. Contact tracing, full in-person learning at reduced physical distances, and again, for us to be at full in-person, we need to operate at 3 feet versus 6 for much of last year. It increases the importance of contact tracing procedures. The district will communicate with the local health department regarding suspected or confirmed cases. We'll coordinate with the local health department as they facilitate the contact tracing process. We'll assist using tools that include assigned seats, seating charts, attendance records, our student management system, security cameras, visitor logs, etc., to help, if they identify a positive case, we'll help them determine any close contacts of that individual. The district will protect the privacy of individuals when communicating with families and staff regarding suspected or confirmed cases. And very important, it is the local Department of Health that will determine quarantines, as it always has been, based on evolving standards related to physical distance, length of exposure, vaccination status, etc. So we assist them in communicating, but it is their decisions that we're communicating simply because we have quicker access to our families. And then their decisions are subject to change upon further investigation. So a little bit new information as the county is starting to provide us with some information as to the standards they'll use in determining quarantines, but this will evolve, we expect. DOH will order anyone who tests positive to isolate in the home for 10 days. That's where we could get into some small or even large-scale quarantines and switches to remote learning. DOH will interview positive individuals to determine close contacts. Asymptomatic vaccinated individuals with no symptoms, a little bit redundant there, I apologize, will not be ordered to quarantine, but will be told they should mask indoors for 14 days, that's beyond just school, and test between 3 to 5 days from exposure. Again, these standards could change as we go, but this is where they are right now. Unvaccinated individuals within 6 feet of a positive case for at least 15 minutes unmasked will likely to be quarantined for 10 days. The key being unmasked. If they're masked, the DOH will take that into account. Students fully masked at 3 feet and 6 feet will not be identified as a close contact so long as both the positive case and the close contact were masked during that period of time. But those are the general parameters. Positive cases in second grade and below will be decided on a case-by-case basis based upon the quality of masking and physical distance. The theory being there that our smaller learners have a tougher time with masking, but we've had good success last year with that, and we hope to continue that. And the county has also chimed in that mask breaks, if children are 6 feet apart, for example, alternating rows, taking their mask breaks at the same time, then periodic short-term mask breaks less than 10 minutes are reasonable. So we'll coordinate that our students have, each of our students experience a 10-minute mask break per 40-minute class period. COVID-19 testing. State Ed and CDC recommend that schools conduct screening tests in areas of substantial and high transmission. Midlakes will consult with Ontario County Administration and Public Health regarding any future decisions to conduct voluntary COVID-19 testing. We're not doing that at this time. Ontario County is finalizing a federal grant that would provide them funds to support testing in schools. If a testing protocol is implemented, the reasons, the populations to be tested, and the procedures for testing will be communicated to families with as much notice as possible. Ontario County may be able to support voluntary diagnostic testing in schools. They're looking into that right now as part of the grant, where if a student or staff member presented with symptoms and voluntarily or with parent permission consented to a non-invasive COVID test, that those could be used. That's very early in the discussion stages, but is a possibility. More information would be provided before that was ever implemented. In the meantime, symptomatic individuals will be referred to their family physician or urgent care facility with a recommendation to be tested. Individuals who test positive may return to work when cleared by the local health department to do so, work or school. And Ontario County is finalizing flow charts that will outline quarantine criteria for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals who are symptomatic and or exposed to a positive case. So I've seen drafts of 3 different flow charts that once finalized, we may be able to post on our website. It will certainly be shared with our nurses, but they're still in development. Just a reminder of transportation. We continue to encourage our families to provide transportation if they're able to, but we are prepared to transport all of our students at 2 to 3 per seat. Masks will be required, masks will be provided. Fixed or assigned seats will be used to support contact tracing, and windows and roof hatches will be opened whenever weather permits to increase ventilation. And we still ask parents and guardians not to put their child on a bus if they're experiencing COVID-19 symptoms. Required shifts to remote learning. Midlakes will shift to remote learning in response to limited and or large-scale quarantine or isolation orders from DOH or a declaration of a public health emergency by New York State. So it could be a case where 4 students in the classroom are ordered to quarantine as a result of an exposure, and those 4 students would switch to remote learning. It could be half a class, a whole class, a grade level, a school, and we would use our system from last year using our one-to-one iPads and iPad Pros, the Seesaw and Schoology platforms, combination of synchronous and asynchronous instruction to switch over. Remote students would follow along remotely with the regular daily schedule to the extent possible. Shifts to remote learning resulting from positive case exposure may apply again to small groups, right up to large groups and everywhere in between, and we'll communicate small-scale and large-scale shifts to remote learning to the appropriate families with as much notice as possible. Last week, we talked about the potential for providing an optional remote learning model for families that were not comfortable sending their students back to school under this system. Just as a reminder, State Ed Commissioner Rosa has said, so long as allowed by public health officials, schools should be open for in-person teaching and learning, and students should be in school. Schools must be ready to shift to remote instruction for quarantine and isolation or school closure or public health emergency, as I previously described. Schools are not required to provide remote instruction if they're open for full-time in-person instruction, but they may work with students and families if it is deemed in the best educational interest of the student. And that was discussed at length by the board last week, who gave me direction to move forward in trying to set up a remote model or an option through the E-Academy, through the Erie One BOCES. So we are attempting to offer that as an option for 21-22. Today we spent the day confirming family interest. We're still waiting to hear back from some of the families who use the online form to indicate interest, to confirm that they want to enroll. And it says here we're waiting on enrollment and availability from Erie One BOCES. I had a conversation with the principal at about 5:30 this evening, who confirmed that if we're able to lock in tomorrow, then we should be able to lock up the seats that we need for the students who expressed interest. So we have about 5 families that we need to finish connecting with and hope to lock that in tomorrow. There is no commitment by the district at this time to offer optional remote learning beyond 21-22. This is a 1 year at a time decision based upon circumstances. Very important, students who opt for remote learning as a choice would still have access to Midlakes school sports and extracurricular activities in accordance with our health and safety protocols and with parent transportation. Some more key points with remote learning for those families who opt for it. Enrollment in E-Academy would be a full year commitment. Students would not be allowed to switch to in-person learning during the school year. So we have to purchase the spots up front, and then they are purchased for the year. So it's a full year commitment. If a student chooses remote learning, then all instruction and support services would be provided remotely. Students who enroll in optional remote learning would have access to the courses and offerings provided by E-Academy. And this is for grades K through 12. There is no option for UPK, as it is a non-required program. A student who chooses remote instruction through the E-Academy would not be eligible for in-person instructional opportunities such as CTE programs provided by Midlakes. If they were able to attend in person for CTE, then they should be able to attend in person for the rest of their academic program. The district would provide devices to students who enroll in the academy. The preferred device is a Chromebook. We would start with iPads while we ordered the Chromebooks for those students. E-Academy follows its own curriculum aligned to New York State standards, so all assignments, activities, assessments, and grades would be determined by the staff and administration of the E-Academy. Midlakes would document attendance and course grades provided by E-Academy. So again, offering remote learning through E-Academy is pending confirmation of availability from Erie One BOCES. I got that verbally late this afternoon and hope to lock that in tomorrow for those families who opted for remote learning for their children. Implementation and adjustment. The 21-22 reopening plan took effect today, August 23rd, including indoor masking requirements for student, staff, and visitors based on current substantial transmission rate in Ontario County. Meetings between the Ontario County Superintendents and Ontario County Administration and Public Health continue on a weekly basis. Midlakes will continue to work with Ontario County and our school physician to monitor, evaluate, and respond to changing circumstances. And the reopening plan is subject to change throughout the school year. Any adjustments will be communicated with as much notice as possible. Questions?
Matt, did you note how many students signed up for the remote learning? Or
We had, our original interest was 35, and we expect our final enrollment to be between 23 and 28.
how's that spread through the years? Is it
There are, I think our highest numbers are 5 or 6 at 5th and 9th grade. We have none at 2nd grade, and then it's like 1 to 3 at pretty much every other grade level, K-12. They have the least amount of flexibility, K-6, because they're trying to run just one section at each of the K-6 grade levels. So that's an area where they really need our numbers as soon as possible. Whereas They have a little bit more flexibility at the secondary level. But still, they're getting demand, they're meeting the needs of the schools in their own BOCES, but then through cross-contract are opening it up statewide. So there's only a handful of BOCES that are offering remote learning options, and they vary in quality. This is the one that we investigated and deemed to be the most well thought out, most comprehensive. So I'm sure they're fielding requests from across the state.
I have friends that live in North Carolina, and North Carolina did a similar program last year where they did a statewide homeschool program like this, and it worked out well for the kids that chose to come
Yeah,
home.
this one seems really well
Yeah.
thought out. Erie One BOCES, for those, who are familiar, most things they do, they do pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
They're responsible for the policy service for the entire state. This one, everything's aligned to the state standards, but they also have a social emotional curriculum that's aligned and embedded in it as well. So I think it provides a good option for those families who feel that that's the best fit for their kids.
Do we buy the Chromebooks through them, or do we have to go and get them?
We'll buy the Chromebooks through BOCES,
Through our BOCES.
using our technology budget, and then we'll get aid on that as we do on all BOCES purchases.
Is the Ontario County contact tracing and quarantine standards, are those set or are those evolving?
I don't think anything's set. I think they're going to evolve throughout the school year based upon what transmission rates are, what happens with variants, what data shows from schools. Even last year as we switched from 6 feet to 3 feet, they went through a transition period where they were still contact tracing based on 6 feet after case 6 had switched to 3. And then it wasn't until after several weeks of stability that then they adapted and switched to 3 feet. So I imagine that they'll be monitoring and adjusting their criteria throughout the year.
And can that be found like on their page too?
Yeah, nothing's been finalized. Like I said, I've been able to see drafts,
Okay.
but we're nothing that I can post on our website yet. But they are distinguishing between vaccinated and unvaccinated, and between masked and unmasked, as well as, the distance and the time spent close to somebody, especially if unmasked.
Yeah, and following up on what Amber said there, so what you presented tonight is through your first conversations with them, so it's the first we've seen it. And I am encouraged that they are noting if people are masked, then you're indicating that they will not be quarantined. They're not being identified
Right.
as a close contact, which is, I think, supports our decision to go with masks. As some people in our public comment last time, wondered that question: if people wearing masks, would they need to quarantine or not? And this indicates that that they will not, which
Right.
is good to hear.
And even last year, as the county would contact trace and speak with our nurses, really the first question they would ask the nurses to find out is, what kind of maskers are they? Do they follow the protocols? Do they do a good job with mask wearing, or are they fidgeting a lot? Are they pulling it down below their nose? Things like that. That all factored into whether students were quarantined or not, and they've now confirmed that they'll move forward with that standard.
Matt, is John still our COVID?
We're no longer required to designate one, so there won't be one specific person. But, we'll all still continue to work collaboratively. Our entire administrative team, our nurses were an absolute godsend last year, and I expect that will continue to be the case, although they'll get a little relief from not having to monitor those temperature screening stations every morning, or the daily health screeners. But I still expect them to be fielding a lot of daily phone calls as our families do a nice job of checking with them, whenever in doubt about whether to send their child.
Matt, looking at remote learning, just to reiterate or
Yeah,
whatever.
remote learning, is that what you said?
Remote learning, yeah. We noted, and we've discussed, that we were not required to have a remote learning option. And
Correct.
I am, happy for this board, happy, and want to thank you and the administrators for going through the work to offer this. I do think it's important that we're doing so, and I'm glad that we agreed to put the resources forward to support it, and I'm glad that your team found the Erie One BOCES option and are working through all the nuances of making it happen. So thank you for that.
Thank you, and I will certainly pass on your appreciation. And they've done really a nice job of not only vetting the program, but, doing all the legwork to contact the families. And there's more ahead. Tomorrow's going to be another busy day as we gather that final information to send to Erie One. But I will certainly extend your message.
Thank you. Any other questions for Matt from the board? We'll have further discussion on this as part of board discussion later, if there's other things you feel like discussing on this, but we'll move on in our agenda to reports. Superintendent's report. Matt, anything else to talk about?
I do not. I'm going to pass on the superintendent's report as we just met last week. And what I just presented has been pretty much what we've been focused on.
That makes sense. Crystal is going to get the public comment list from the beginning, or from the front of the auditorium. Just read our standard clause here. The Board of Education values the input of the Midlakes community and welcomes public comment on any topic related to board work, with the exception of matters pertaining to individual personnel and/or students. All public comments must include appropriate language and observe proper decorum. Anyone making public comment must identify themselves by name, and the public comment period will be limited to a total of 30 minutes and one comment per person. Individual comments will be limited to 2 minutes. The board does not respond to items presented or questions raised through public comment. However, the board may discuss topics of public comment at a later time and/or contact the individual who submitted the comment. We have two individuals signed up for public comment. First person, Laurel Shoemaker, 1986 Spafford Road, Phelps.
Good evening. I am Laurel Shoemaker from 1986 Spafford Road in Phelps. Thank you for this opportunity to communicate with you all. I humbly come to you as a 30-year resident of Phelps, a wife of one husband and a mother of 9, a lover of life and freedom. I do come representing many voices, strongly encouraging you all to reconsider your decision to require students, staff, and visitors of the Midlakes campus to be masked. The irrationality of the decision to follow the wild goose chase, roller coaster, or runaway train, otherwise known as the CDC guidelines, does not represent the freedoms our country stands for. Rather, it seems to mirror an episode from the Twilight Zone. To mask or not to mask, how many feet away should we be from one another? Well, according to the FDA, a mask is a medical device. It seems only right and proper for the parents of the students to decide whether or not their children will participate in the use of said medical device. Rights of the parents of our community and our country and our state are being taken away. This should concern the board. You all have taken an oath to uphold the United States Constitution and the Constitution of New York State. Contrary to popular belief, the New York State Education Department did not have the best interest of the families of the Midlakes community in mind when they issued this guidance. When Governor Cuomo declined developing any guidance for reopening, he left the decision up to the individual school districts. I'm not sure at what point the Education Department took it upon themselves to send out guidance, but we, the people of the Midlakes District, elected you all on this fine board. I don't honestly have any idea who the people are on the Department of New York State Education. I do know that they don't represent us. COVID is going to come and COVID is going to go. The variants galore, all different kinds of names and colors, I'm sure. There will be the next crisis. And just FYI, the fruit trees in Tanzania also test positive. So the fact that you're going to have XYZ amount of cases and it gives you to be in a new color or a new, having this large change in transmission rate, that it just doesn't seem rational. Anyway, sorry. So this one crisis after another, I think we're going to see come and go. Our children's long-term well-being, both emotionally and physically, and success is at stake. We hope that you would be making accommodations for exemptions for families who are also freedoms subscribing. And we do insist and implore you to ensure that the constitutionally protected freedoms of the families in the Midlakes District are not violated. These are inalienable rights given to us by God as we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. The rights of bodily autonomy and sovereignty. Americans' freedoms are never suspended due to someone's fears or in the name of public health and safety. So I encourage you all to be pro-truth, pro-breathing, pro-thinking, and pro-freedom. On a little different note, we are interested to know that if you might have a program set in place to fulfill a U.S. federal law, Title 36, Code 106, Section 3, parentheses, little Part B, under the public law, each educational institution that receives federal funds for a fiscal year shall hold an educational program on the U.S. Constitution on September 17th of such year for the students served by the educational institution. So we were wondering if you all might have something in place to present the students in Midlakes with and having to do with the Constitution. We do have a small token for each one of you of your very own pocket-sized Constitution that we can pass out at the end for you all. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Second person that signed in is Lisa Mattoon, 6 South Street, Clifton Springs.
Hello, my name is Lisa Mattoon. I live in Clifton Springs. I have 3 children currently enrolled at Midlakes, and I'm going to say thank you. That was beautiful, and it's really hard to follow. I've spent hours researching, emailing the board, trying to have phone conversations, which doesn't happen because you do not have individual conversations with us, unfortunately. We are locked out, and we are tired, and we are sick of it. Our students deserve more. Our community deserves more. That was not part of my comment at all, but I felt the need to say it. As I've spent so many hours emailing, writing comments, erasing, moving back and forth, I'm going to go with it. As most of you know by now, I'm here tonight to share my frustrations. I understand they may not be frustrations of yours, they may not be problems in your personal lives, and we all have different views. But I need to be sure that my voice, along with so many other parents in the districts who are afraid to speak up, is heard. My husband, a Midlakes alumni, and I have 2 beautiful and healthy children that have been in the district for 6 years. Our youngest is enrolled in UPK and will join his sisters each day at Midlakes, something we were so excited for. Watching not only my children's mental health, but along with so many others fail and take a turn during the pandemic was heartbreaking. After months of living in a space where they were told not to hug, to cover up their smile, not to get too close to their friends, and to have staff members grill them about who they spent the weekend with and how many people were there. It seemed like maybe it was just a small price for them to go in person 5 days a week and have to wear a face covering. However, the more research I did, the more I talked to other parents, I learned more and more about how these bacteria-filled face coverings were harming our children. The last straw for me was having to call an ambulance to take my daughter to the ER. As they ran several tests and grilled us with questions, we had a much deeper conversation about my daughter's stress level and the amount of screen time she had been exposed to. As you reflect on last year yourselves, you can probably guess what was ruled as the cause of her failing mental health. The stress. The indoctrination of fear has got to stop. The mental health pandemic will continue for years to come. And last year, it was swept under the rug as a counselor position was held vacant in a year that we needed it more than ever. As board members, if you don't have a degree or some type of firsthand experience of education or the mental health field, I would strongly suggest you take classes on mental health and the needs of our children. While we waited in excitement to see what the new school year would bring, I commended the superintendent for writing one letter of advocacy to the government. I truly felt we were moving in a positive direction. Our neighboring Ontario County School has shared that their plan involves masking on buses and only when students cannot distance more than 3 feet. Beyond that, it is the parent's choice. Other Ontario County districts are enforcing masks, but at a lower level than ours as far as transmission rate goes. Why the need to enforce stricter rules than other schools in our county? We have never masked during the flu season. We've never worn hairnets when there were those awful lice outbreaks. Why are we starting now when children are among the population least vulnerable to both contract or have serious symptoms from COVID-19 and the variants? There does not seem to be any rational basis for imposing stricter mandates on children than imposed on adults. Adults are able to, most employers will let them be vaccinated or masked and not ask. That kids do not have a choice. Adults are back to being able to choose. Kids still cannot choose. It's giving your district-wide mandates only provides, in my opinion, a false sense of security. Again, just my opinion. I am not an anti-masker. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I am all for everyone having the ability to choose what is right for their family. Again, as with the lack to full person education last year, parents do not have a choice this year. In my family, we do not mask. Our children build up their immune system, and we take the appropriate actions when we get sick. We will not vaccinate our children. That does not mean that the next parent in the district is wrong because they choose to mask and choose to vax. It means that we all need to have the right to choose. Your face covering requirement for the upcoming school year leaves so many unanswered questions, some of which you did answer tonight. Thank you. You state that mask breaks will be provided. How will you ensure this happens? Last year, when I called to share that my child had not been getting mask breaks and had worn a mask for 7 hours straight at school, have you ever washed one of those? Have you ever taken a mask off a child that had it on for 7 hours to see that they've either eaten the inside of their mask, blew their nose on it? It's disgusting. I called, and I was told that my child had to request a mask break. As far as I'm concerned, I believe the policy was last year that mask breaks were implemented. They weren't. You had to ask. Why should my child have to ask, or any other child, ask to breathe clean air? How do you expect a child who has been indoctrinated with fear around this virus to want to speak up to ask to take a mask break? In the spring, the idea of tents was brought up to encourage more space outside and without masking. Over the summer, when I emailed, this idea was quickly shot down. I voiced my concern about why it was not happening in the upcoming year. If not tents, then more outdoors time, please. Last year, every student in my child's class had to remember to bring a towel to sit on outside. If anyone forgot their towel, the whole class stayed inside, masked, 90-degree days, inside and masked. What's the plan to ensure these kids get outside? And again, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Guidance is not a mandate. It is not a law. I am sick of hearing that the district will lose money if we do not follow guidance. At what point do you stand up for our children? At what point will their true health and safety come first? At what point is enough enough? And I'm curious, are you not teaching my body, my choice in the schools anymore? I can't imagine that you would teach students the importance of standing up for themselves and how to make choices for their own body, all while forcing them to cover their faces. To me, it seems a little bit hypocritical. I hope you continue to share the advocacy you are doing to return to a new normal year for our children. They deserve more. On a side note, I've been wondering, is the community aware that since May 10th, there have been 18 staff resignations and 1 Board of Education resignation? Some of our best teachers and staff are leaving the district. Why is this happening? I know that if you have gone to other districts, it's not because they're afraid of masking or afraid of COVID. Why are they leaving? I hope this concern is also focused on soon so that we can continue to rebuild our district. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for those public comments. Is there anybody else that wishes to make one? Please go to the microphone and state your name and address, please.
Hi guys, Erica Van Savage. My husband and I live in Stanley. I felt obligated to give a public comment tonight to address a couple of things to you guys. First, despite my vehement opposition to masking my healthy children, I did not fill out the online form to express interest in the one potential virtual option for this year. E-Academy by Erie One BOCES, I couldn't find had much successful track record. I couldn't find any success rate for the E-Academy program. Maybe there is some that I wasn't aware of. Yet you demanded a full 1-year commitment to it, and I can only imagine why this specific program was the bone that was thrown at parents such as myself. It was one option. There was many other options that could have been provided, and you guys can correct me through an email. I'd appreciate it if you have a track record of E-Academy. So against my beliefs and against my personal values, my husband's values, the values that we believe in are religious values, 2 of my children will be forcefully muzzled by you, the Board of Education, in order so that they can receive an education. So I will stay here and I will continue to fight you guys, not physically, so I'm sure I'll be on YouTube for that, but to fight for the education that my taxes pay for, that my children have a right to fight for an exemption to your harmful mask mandate, to fight the social justice curriculum that the director of curriculum proudly chooses and that some teachers push onto students on purpose from the primary school up, to fight the videos that you choose to show 5th graders that praise Black Lives Matter activists, that teach my daughter that her white silence is violence and that police are violent. I am the proud wife of a police officer and the daughter of a police officer, so that was incredibly offensive, and I would strongly encourage you to reconsider the brain pop video that you show to 5th graders in this district, because it's disgusting. Thank you. I pulled my daughter out of school over that video, kept her home for the whole rest of the school year. Secondly, since my children will be forcefully muzzled by you, I stand here to give you a verbal notice. Since you here are the ones mandating that my child wear a mask in order to receive their education, despite any opposition, philosophical or medical, that I and my husband may have, I would like a confirmation from all of you that you will also accept any liability should my children suffer any harm from wearing a mask. Harm not limited to physical, but also emotional and psychological harm. I would like your confirmation that you are also accepting liability of this harm, because if you cannot stand by your decision to mask every single student by taking full responsibility for any harm on a full spectrum that it causes them, then perhaps you should rethink the mandatory masking of every single child and offer an exemption to the ones that should not be masked. I bought this mask yesterday at Wegmans for $2.99. It was made in China, and on the package it read, and I quote, "Improper use may result in sickness." So the mask that you are all mandating may be what makes children sick. I don't know how many elementary students know the proper way to use a mask. I'm not sure that they've ever been taught, unless they're washing their hands before and after, only touching the ear loops, etc. They're using it improperly. But the idea of masking is not about health. It is about compliance and it is about money, and that in itself is what is really truly sick. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here for public comment?
Hi, Christy Kuhn from Clifton Springs. I didn't want to talk today, but I feel that I have to. I support everything these women have got up and said. I too had a 5th grader this year that came home with very confusing questions, and I'm just going to leave it at that. But I will like the board to readdress the bag lunches. I think that's kind of wrong. Just offering cheese sandwiches and peanut butter and jellies, having them lined up at the tables, waiting for them to march in and sit down again, 3 feet apart from their friends, separated by tables again. I really feel that's wrong. I'm a dental hygienist. I work 8 inches from people's mouths. I have never been exposed, and everybody is considered contaminated in my world. And that's what I choose to teach my children as well. There's normal things you do. You wash your hands. You do what you have to do to stay healthy. You stripped our kids of their herd immunity. This moderate number is going to go up. It's not going to stop. I wish you would reconsider the masking at the moderate level. I sit here as a mother, and when I have my children talking to people, I really wish that my children make eye contact. And it's very upsetting when I sit in the back and I watch people not really looking at the people sitting here talking. It's not right. So please hear these words and reconsider, because this is not going away. And you need to feed the children in our community as well. Some of these students don't get lunches, and this is the only time they have to eat. And a muffin and a cheese sandwich and a bag of fruit is not it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that. Moving on to board discussion on the reopening school plan. So board, listening to Superintendent Sickles' plan that he put forth, and the public comments that we just heard. Matt, I forgot to note, the plan is on the website, and I think we were all emailed it. There you go.
Yes.
Your opening
Yeah.
plan has been available.
The plan is on the website, and an email was sent to UPK through 12 families with a link embedded to the plan.
Yep. So, board, is there any items there that we wish to discuss amongst, in addition to what we've done there?
Why is it we chose not to do hot lunches?
At this point,
Matt, go ahead.
we're just getting our procedures set. The food service department's ready to switch to hot lunches as soon as we get down the 3 feet. We ended the year 6 feet in both buildings in lunch, in the cafeterias. So as soon as we get our procedures down, on that, then we will look at returning to our service lines, because the hot lunches would require the kids going through the service lines, which we have not used under the current situation. So that decision is just pending, and that's written in the plan that we will reevaluate that.
Yeah, I agree. I think what Christy was trying to say is a lot of the families, this is the place they get their really good meal during the day, right? And we want it to be nutritious, so I guess I would support the moving forward and feeding these kids good food for lunch whenever possible.
I agree. Hot lunches.
Matt, do you think you're gonna start working that process after the kids come back and we get everybody back in the building to do more to report back?
Yeah, we've got some pretty significant staffing changes and
Yep.
turnover in the
Yep.
food service. Our most senior cook manager is retired, and we're going through a transition, so we want our new people to get settled in, have our, in both buildings, get the procedures down in terms of, the contact tracing pieces that we have to do. And then once we feel like we're ready, I know our food service director is ready to go to put a plan together.
So you can report back to it at September's meeting then? Okay. I got nothing else.
Nothing else. So, yeah, approval of the board, or approval of the plan is further on in our agenda. But, it's been a lot of work. I know it's been a lot of work. So I feel kind of bad not having a lot of discussion here, but I think it's good. There isn't, it's this whole thing, has not been an easy thing to work through. Most of us have been on the board, when we had this, when this started, 2 Marches ago, and really didn't think we'd be talking about it now, still later. And it's required navigating waters that we've never had to do. And certainly I would like it to be over. But it's not. And I think we're doing the best we can working through it. So, I don't know. Any other thoughts on what we have here?
No, I think, obviously I'm new to the board, but I'm not new to masking, and I'm not new. I'm obviously a nurse, and I've worked in healthcare throughout all of COVID. And even though, masking is independent to a specific district, the quarantining guidelines are not going to be decided at the district level. They're going to be decided at the Ontario County level. And, I think the only benefit to wearing a mask are the positive changes that I've seen in the guidance, right? That you're not going to have to quarantine, and school's not going to be shut down, and we're going to be able to maximize in-person learning, which I think ultimately is what most people want. So, not saying that I love it, but sometimes we had to make a sacrifice to prioritize in-person learning. And because if there are no masks, the county is going to shut down the district time after time after time again. I can promise you that. And we won't be in school at all. Because we don't have control over the decisions that Ontario County is going to make.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm not going to force conversation. That's good. Going last call. Good. All right, moving on to new business. We'll take letter A by itself, which is approving the COVID-19 reopening plan. Oh, Amber, okay, move back to board discussion. Amber asked me earlier, and I forgot to bring it up just now, a question about our board meetings, right? Matt, are we in the way of anybody by being up here? I mean,
I
it's,
was just curious if we were going, is this going to be like our permanent setup? Are we looking to move back to the boardroom at any time, or? I just didn't
That's
know.
really a board discussion as to where you like to be. At this point, I don't know what daytime use the boardroom is going to be needed for, but it's a tight space at this point. But we can discuss that. I mean, is there a specific concern about?
Well, I just didn't know with kids coming back, this being an instructional space, if we were going to be.
Yeah, with the physical distancing, I don't anticipate that being the case. But certainly there will come times when this starts to get used for other purposes. And my first inclination would be to look at other larger spaces like the middle school cafeteria. Just given the increased attendance, plus the challenge of live streaming and capturing everything. At this point, I would lean towards a larger space, but I can certainly start working with the team that puts the meetings together to see if there's a way to do that in the boardroom. It's the size of a classroom, and it's hard to.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't using the space that needed to be used.
Yeah, no, I mean, and we also have the ability, over the summer, we've had the ability to keep this set up, but it doesn't need to be kept set up either.
Okay, just curious.
sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
All right, so back to new business, approving the COVID-19 reopening plan for 21-22. Any further discussion on letter A under new business? All in favor of approving item A, the COVID-19 reopening plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Letter B will take by itself also is to approve the second reading and adopt policy on COVID-19 health and safety requirements. Any discussion on that policy? Hearing none, all in favor of approving policy 5693, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Looking at C, D, and E as a block, which is the rest of new business. Any discussion on items C and D and E under new business? Hearing none, all in favor of items C, D, and E, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Looking at personnel, item A is 5 resignations, and item B is 7, appointments. Item C is Appendix C, appointments. Item D, mentors. Item E, coaching. And item F, unpaid leave. Like taking A through F as a block under personnel. Any discussions on A through F under personnel? Hearing no discussions on A through F under personnel. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. A through F are carried. Moving into our, that's it for new business. Moving into our second public comment period. Is there anybody that would wish to make a second public comment during this time? Put them on the table, we can get them after, thank you.
Have this, I can grab them when we're done.
All right, moving to adjournment. Any discussion on adjourning the meeting? Okay. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all for attending.